are you? Oh, okay. Well, so we got the team this morning, and we got prepared on Thursday. Well, once I get there, learn for a long time. I want to walk around. I'd like to call the August Jefferson County Board of Legislators meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of reflection. Be seated. Roll call of members. Legislator Gero? Here. Peck? Here. Dodo? Here. Maxon? Here. Monticelli? Here. Reed? Here. Cantwell? Here. Ferris? Here. Johnson? Here. Nabawanik? Here. McBride? Here. Gray? Here. We got Maxon plus one. This is Jack, the infamous Jack from Facebook. Jack, welcome. Okay, glad to have you. If you got anything to say, just press the mic, press the button, okay, where it says talk. Alrighty. Anytime your dad presses the mic, you press it faster and you start speaking first. Okay? How's that sound, Jack? A deal? Okay. Jack, we got a deal. We can do business, you and I. Okay. Before we get going today, we just want to recognize a couple of individuals within our employment. As everybody is aware, we had, late on a Friday afternoon, I believe it was, we had I guess a pop or an explosion or something, and then we had vehicles caught fire, big vehicles. And if anybody, I know Mr. Doldo was there, but all the dump trucks were lined up in a row. So the significance of this was we lost two and a half, maybe three, and we could have lost a lot more had it not been for these two individuals who happened to be in the vicinity and took it upon themselves to jump in vehicles while others were on fire and start moving them and creating some space around the vehicles. So we averted, and I'm sure Mr. Lawrence appreciates the action because we averted a much larger loss with that regard. So it's appropriate that we recognize them for the actions that they took that day. and as well the deputy that was there, Cullen, that was fueling up his vehicle. So the three of them really saved us a significant amount of headache and potentially money. So, so certificate of recognition on behalf of the Board of Legislators presented to Edwin J. Davis, Jr. and Curtis A. Roberts in recognition of your courageous efforts and quick thinking on the early afternoon of May 24th, 2019 in relocating vehicles at the site of multiple vehicle fire at the Highway Department and averting any further damage. This certificate is presented on behalf of the citizens of Jefferson County in appreciation of your actions and your commendation of willingness to get involved without regard for your own well-being, and witness whereof we have hereunto our set our signatures and seal. Myself, Chairman of the Board, Phil Reed, General Services Chairman, and Robert F. Hagman, County Administrator. If you would please give them a big hand. Yep.
The other guy is Curtis Scott. Can I get to him?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sure. That's all, I think will illustrate exactly what kind of danger this is.
If I could just explain it. The one truck that actually started the fire is way over on the left. You can't even see it. So the one that's actually ablaze right now is the second truck in line. The third truck in line is one of the two that Ed and Curtis actually moved. And you can see how expensive it was. Pretty courageous of what they did. And if the fire had continued, the county would have lost well over $1 million because there was like a $400,000 paver at the end. And it would have curtailed well over $1 million worth of work this summer. So I do applaud what they did for us. And I've been driving or trying to plead with Spike and with the guys that I want his crew on our department. And Spike's got a great team, and I'm still going to try. So, but it is a credit to them, and the county highway appreciates their dedication and their bravery. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We keep trying to tell Jim this is not the right way to get new vehicles. So anyhow, job well done. Privilege of the floor. Would anybody like to address the board? Please step forward. State your name and address. None? One once, please. Okay. Reading in minutes of the last session. Does anybody has a desire to have those read to them? Okay. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections? None. Then they'll stand as presented. Presentation of petitions, notices, communications.
This evening, we have none.
Okay. Reports of standing committees.
We have a report of the Finance and Rules Committee reporting favorably on resolutions number 147, 148, 149, 152, 153, 154, 157, and 160. We also have a report of the Finance and Rules Committee recommending approval of legislator expenses.
Okay. reports of county officers and others.
We have a report from the county treasurer with investments in cash on hand from last month. We also have a report from the county administrator and budget transfers for last month. And finally, this evening, we have a report of the county auditor who is here in person to deliver her report of assessment.
Okay. That's it. Local laws, resolutions, resolution number 140.
Payment of legislator expenses.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 141.
Amending the 2019 county budget relative to additional state aid for Board of Elections and authorizing agreements in relation thereto.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator McBride? Peck? Maxon? Doldo? Reed? Nebewanik? Johnson? Monticelli? Darrow? Cantwell? Ferris? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
142.
Amending the 2019 county budget in relation to employment and training department.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator Darrow? Maxon?
Right, Jack.
Ferris? Cantwell? Johnson? Nebewanik? Reed? Doldo? Peck? Monticelli? McBride? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Resolution 143.
Amending the 2019 county budget for tax software.
Discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Legislator Johnson? Darrow? Monticelli? Doldo? Peck? McBride? Nebewanik? Ferris? Reed? Maxon? Cantwell? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah, I don't know about 144. Anybody interested in 144? Any interest
One
out there? Okay, we got a hand wave out there. We'll go with it then. Resolution 144.
Appointing county highway superintendent.
Discussion? Yes, Mr. Doldo?
I think it would be a good idea to reappoint him to keep Cindy. You know, she's used to living a certain lifestyle, so I would hate to penalize Cindy for, you know, Jim not continuing to work here, so I will support this.
Alrighty, I suppose. Keeps him out of the house during the day, that's why. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Congratulations, Mr. Lawrence. You stay on for another 3 months?
Yeah.
We do short terms now. 145, please.
Amending the policy of Jefferson County Board of Legislators in regards to the abatement of real property and other taxation for alternative energy projects.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 146.
Authorizing grant agreement, State Environmental Quality Review Act determination, amending the 2019 county budget in relation to the 2019 Community Development Block Grant Award from New York State Office of Community Renewal.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator Maxon? McBride? Johnson? Nebewanik? Ferris? Doldo? Monticelli? Cantwell? Reed? Darrow? Peck? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
147.
Authorizing agreement in relation to the construction of the aircraft rescue firefighting facility at Watertown International Airport and amending the 2019 county budget and capital plan.
Discussion? Yes, Mr. Nebewanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think years back there when we met our goal of 10,000 employments there, you know, that was significant because we went from 150,000 a year in aid to $1 million from the FAA, and the enthusiasm of that, I think I do remember Mr. Hageman cautioning me that with that aid will come strings attached to it, and certainly I think this was obviously, one of the projects there with the FAA were, strings were attached to certain projects that they want to see done at the airport there. But the good news is that, basically it's 97.5% paid through grants, aggressively pursued by engineers, and I think we do have a good plan in place with the $5 fee per ticket, where our portion will be coming from the people that are using the airport. So overall, I think this is, it's a pretty expensive, obviously, project, but I think we have a good plan overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nablonik. Further discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator Reed? Yes. Maxon? Yes. McBride? Yes. Carroll? Yes. Peck? Yes. Cavalwani? Yes. Cantwell? Yes. Barrett? Yes. Doldo? Yes. Barnagelli? Yes. Johnson? Yes. Gray?
Yes.
Motion carried.
148.
Amending 2019 county budget and capital plan in relation to the Watertown International Airport Environmental Assessment Land Acquisition and Destruction.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator McBride? Yes. Maxon? Yes. Barrett? Yes. Barnagelli? Cantwell? Yes. Carroll? Yes. Johnson? Yes. Doldo? Yes. Peck? Yes. Cavalwani? Yes. Reed? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carried.
149.
Authorize an agreement with the New York State Department of Transportation in relation to New York statewide opportunities for airport revitalization, marketing grant for Watertown International Airport.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator Monticelli? Johnson? McBride? Doldo? Reed? Cavalwani? Carroll? Peck? Cantwell? Maxon? Barrett? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carried.
150.
Accepting donations on behalf of the Watertown International Airport.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 151.
Accepting donations on behalf of the Watertown International Airport.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 152.
Amending the 2019 county budget in relation to the fiscal year 17 and 18 Homeland Security Grant Program funds.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 53.
Authorize the implementation and funding in the first instance 100% of federal aid and state market salary program aid eligible costs of transportation federal aid projects, appropriating funds therefore, and amending 2019 county budget and capital.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator Doldo? Johnson? Cantwell? Carroll? Monticelli? Barrett? Reed? Cavalwani? Peck? Maxon? McBride? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carried.
154.
Amending the 2019 county budget in relation to the Highway Department TIP fund.
Okay. Discussion? Something to keep Mr. Lawrence working. Now that we just reappointed him. We'll give him some work to do. So, roll call.
Legislator Monticelli? Barrett? Peck? Johnson? Doldo? Cantwell? McBride? Cavalwani? Maxon? Reed? Carroll? Gray?
Yes.
Motion carried.
There you go, Jim. Job security. 155.
Authorize the Jefferson County to be the lead agency under the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the purpose of the 2019 Jefferson County Snowmobile Trails PCS update, minor reroutes, and short additions pursuant to New York State Snowmobile Grant and Aid Program, and making the determination non-significant.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jack. Carried. 156.
adopting participation plan in relation to the county's award to New York State Community Development Block Grant Program.
Discussion. All in favor, aye? Opposed? Carried. 157.
Amending the 2019 county budget to recognize insurance recovery and allocating same in the sheriff's department budget.
Discussion. Okay, roll call.
Legislator Gerald. Yes. Doldo. Yes. Maxson. Yes. McBride. Yes. Reed. Yes. Monticelli. Yes. Kepler. Yes. Harris. Yes. Neverwanick. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Peck. Yes. Gray.
Yes.
Motion carried.
158.
Expressing support for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for the designation of the Lake Ontario National Marine Sanctuary.
Discussion. Yes, Mr. Maxson, Senior.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I did, probably 2 years ago, back in 2017, I'd just like to speak in opposition. I know that we have an economy that is almost entirely dependent on the federal largesse in the form of Fort Drum, and that it seems like a really good idea to ask the federal government for even more largesse in creating this national marine sanctuary. Again, I read the authorizing legislation that the federal government has passed, and in marine sanctuaries, the federal government claims the right to control all marine resources, which is a term so broadly defined as to frighten me. And I know that the government isn't going to be out to get us today, but I would prefer that we have less federal government in our county economy than more. So I don't begrudge anybody supporting this, particularly those people on the waterfront. I concede the appeal. I just oppose the encroachment of the federal government over our resources. So I will oppose the resolution.
Okay, very well. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I guess just as a point of clarification, I know this is meant to protect underwater archaeological resources. Have they particularly identified what areas of interest that directly affect our county, or what is the benefit out of this? I guess.
There have been shipwrecks, both found and some through history that are yet to be found along the shores of all four counties that are contiguous with one another. That's why the area is defined the way it is. So, yes, there will be further exploration off of the shores of Jefferson County, as well as Wayne, Cayuga, and Oswego.
With the end point being that they become a protected site?
Yes.
That was the
Yes.
very purpose of this. So, I guess, and to that effect, that is probably a good thing to protect these archaeological resources from exploitation and from people pillaging them. I understand Legislators Maxson's concern with it, and I kind of looked at that before when this first came up, but also at the end that this is an international body of water. It's under federal jurisdiction anyways. I'll be in support of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Further discussion? None? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? No. 159.
Authorizing agreement with the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee in relation to the New York State Highway Safety Program grant.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 160.
Amending the 2019 county budget relative to additional revenue from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for domestic violence support services for coordinated entry funding.
Discussion? None? Roll call.
Legislator Navalwanick? Yes. Reed? Maxson? Yes. Peck? Yes. Johnson? Yes. Cantwell? Yes. Monticelli? Yes. McBride? Yes. Harris? Yes. Jarrow? Yes. Doldo? Yes. Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And that concludes, folks, both laws, resolutions, and motions. Is there any new business, old business, unaddressed? Mr. Peck?
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Since, after the state budget, there was a lot of the talk about the AIM funding that was being slashed for local municipalities, and I think we're coming towards a time frame when the local governments that were taken out of that program would be expecting something. So I'm just curious where that is at this point in the process in relation to, whether we're going to have to be funding the local governments in our county that were taken out of the AIM program. Because don't they typically get their payment from the state in September?
No, my understanding is they're expecting to pay, historically what was taking place, I'm not certain, but what's happening as of this year is that payment to towns will take place at the end of the year. The payment to villages will take place next May, I believe. So in neither case is there a cycle of 12 months, which does mean to some extent it's likely that we will be covering some of the difference because we won't likely have collected that total amount. Well, we're not doing the collecting, the state's doing the collecting, but in order to pay it back out, likely the first year will be on the negative side. What that number is, we're not sure yet.
So just to clarify my own understanding that it was not going to be this year that the state was pulling the carpet out from underneath them. It's going to be next year that they're shifting it to us.
No, it's taking effect now. Yeah, this year.
Okay, then, so explain this to me again. Who is paying them? Is the state paying them from?
The state comptroller is going to extract it from our sales tax.
Okay.
And then they're going to make the sale to the local themselves, the state comptroller. So the question that nobody can answer is accounting. Okay? And the accounting starts with the marketplace, so to speak, the marketplace internet sales tax that was put in place. Okay? That is supposed to be what's offsetting our main payments, the county, the county reimbursing the local municipalities. We have started to collect. Correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry. I just take it for granted it's on. We've started to collect the marketplace collections, but the deductions have not started. Okay, so and the payments are going to be made, I think, either the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
I believe it's the end of this year, but yeah.
And so they haven't started deducting from us. So, which means that we have to make the 2019 payment. Okay, and the more that they compress that time that they start deducting, is the more that it's going to come out of essentially our fund balance. Although we are collecting the marketplace right now, but they haven't started to extract it from us. So when the payment is due, they will not have collected enough from us. So the question is, where does the balance of that come from? Nobody knows the answer to that yet. Nobody knows when are they going to start deducting from us either. So,
After, in theory, after year one of implementation, we should be in a position to come out ahead on an annual basis. But the implementation in this first year, as Scott explained, is catching Jefferson County, all counties short, because it's not a 12-month collection cycle, but the obligation to the local municipalities is for a 12-month cycle.
Clear as mud. Thank you. But
they don't even know the answers. I'm looking at an email right here. I posed, when they emailed us just recently, I posed, I think, 5 questions to them. And if you think that was clear as mud, you ought to see their answers. That's as clear as mud. They don't even know what they're doing.
as far as follow-up with this, are we going to track that particular sales tax revenue separate, or is it completely bucketed in?
Welcome to the muddy world.
We don't know.
They don't know.
We hope the answer
Okay.
to your question is yes, because now through the state, we're seeing with sales tax collection more of a breakdown of different commodities, which is very positive for us. Gasoline sales is a perfect example. We know when it's really up, we know when it's gone down. In this particular case, there has not been any clarity with the state as how they're going to report it to us. So right now, it's a guessing game. I hope the answer is ultimately we'll see it, so then we really know the net impact of our new obligation. But right now, it's aggressive.
So we don't, further answer to the question, we don't know if the incremental revenue that we're going to collect off the marketplace is going to be enough to cover the AIM payments, regardless of whether they're extracting it throughout the year or doing it in a very compressed model. Question number 3 to the finance people down the state, do they plan on tracking the internet sales tax collection separately so that we know whether or not the incremental revenue is offsetting the AIM payment? Answer, I believe most of the revenue will be able to be tracked. Most of the revenue will be able to be tracked. That's a very definitive answer. I don't know if Tax and Finance will actually track it separately or just lump sum it. If it wasn't clear before, that really makes it a lot more clear. In with the other sales tax revenue statistics. However, doesn't really, if the way the law is written, it doesn't matter if the additional revenue is enough to cover the AIM losses. The county is going to pay it anyway. So there you go. That's your answer from finance people at the state.
That's very reassuring. Thank you. It's just a matter that, something else has been forced upon us, but it makes our ability to budget what sales tax revenues will be a lot more volatile. So that's, I guess, the concern that continue to pressure onto the state as we're coming into our budget cycle.
I think it's fair to acknowledge, though, too, in terms of our local municipalities, towns, and villages, this is not something they endorse either. And through their associations, tried hard to get the law changed, as we did as well. It fell on deaf ears. But, the towns aren't looking for us to collect the money. It should be coming through the state. And they're not going to make anything more. They're going to collect what they did the prior year. So they're kind of in a holding pattern themselves. So they're not gaining anything either, but they've been very supportive of us trying to make changes.
Right, and I think where your question is coming from, they normally have received their payment right now in August, September time frame.
Cash flow is
Which they're not going to see this year, same time frame. So, welcome to the way New York State does business, folks. Further questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one, and it's more of a scheduling note. In the month of September, we had anticipated the date of the upcoming Fall NISAC conference to be a week later than it has turned out to be. We had suggested that, therefore, the finance meeting and the Health and Human Services meeting would be a week earlier, a Tuesday earlier than normal. That's no longer the case because that's when the conference is. So our regular monthly meetings for September for Health and Human Services and Finance and Rules will be on the 24th. We'll keep you posted on that as well. But we're going back to the normal, which would be the last Tuesday of the month.
Anything else? Yes, Mr. Maxon.
Thank you.
Ferris, after you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that our board was aware of what's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow, our elections commissioner will be appearing in Supreme Court. He will be represented by a private attorney. Our county attorney declared in a letter that there was a conflict of interest between Mr. Seymour's position and Ms. Hall's position. And subsequently, our county attorney determined that we will not be paying for Jude Seymour's attorney. I'm not sure if he had that conversation with the board. I know that I hadn't been consulted. I just read it in a letter today. I've read a few of the cases provided by Attorney Joe Burns that make it pretty emphatic that the county is responsible for paying his bill, for defending Jude, for doing his job as an elections commissioner, and that if the county refuses to pay, that the attorney will sue and will win, and then we will be out more money. I don't want to get into the details of the litigation, but that sort of decision ought to be made by a legislative body, a policy decision on whether or not we are going to defend someone acting on behalf of the county in their official capacity. I don't know that you were consulted. I know that I wasn't consulted, and that I think that there is a pretty good chance that we're going to be footing the bill. I think we ought to pay that bill the first time it comes rather than at the business end of a lawsuit.
So I'll speak to that, and Mr. Paulson, you can add to it. But it was originally, okay, so Mr. Seymour's position has evolved, okay? And it was originally discussed with both the commissioners that we would go in for a declaratory judgment, okay? There's two things that we know about the law, okay? Persons is not defined, and there is no provision in the law for a tie. The two things we know. So everybody else is entitled to an opinion, okay? And Mr. Seymour at first supported a judicial intervention, okay? We felt that was appropriate. Mr. Paulson's, it is his determination in terms of paying for outside counsel. Apparently, so we had two employees that we're not arbiters of the law, we're simply to execute the law. Okay, so we were going to go in for declaratory judgment and explain to the judge that we have two employees that are at impasse on how to certify the candidates. Okay, they certified the vote count, but the candidates were not. So that apparently at the last moment was not satisfactory. Okay, and that we all of a sudden we wanted to decide what the law should read, and that's not our position as a county. Okay, and we're just carrying out the law, a law passed by the state legislature on behalf of the city of Watertown. Okay, so if Mr. Seymour elected to advocate for a different position, he's welcome to get his own attorney. Okay. Mr. Paulson, I support Mr. Paulson's decision. It's not a taxpayer responsibility to go in there and advocate on how this law should be executed, okay? Nor is it up to us to fight some street battle that is overarching this whole thing outside of the parameters of the decision of what to do in this election. So we still maintain the position. He still maintains the position. I was with him in Supreme Court the last time, that we're still looking for a declaratory judicial intervention. Everybody's got an opinion on this thing. I've read them all, I've seen them all, I've heard them all, and there's only one opinion that matters right now, and that is a judge sitting on the 10th floor of the state office building. That's the opinion that matters in this law, and that's what we're seeking for. Okay, we're not advocating for two, we're not advocating for three, we're not advocating for one, we're not advocating not to put anybody on the ballot, much as what is being said out there. We're just simply saying, interpret this law for us, please, and let us move on. So, Mr. Paulson, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that on the question of the board's involvement with decisions about defense and indemnification, this board adopted a local law number 1 of 1999, and it did delegate to the county attorney to make those decisions as to whether it was appropriate to grant that right to employees, to officials, officers of the county, and I exercised that authority. I did so very deliberately in this matter, giving it great thought and a great deal of research. I stand by my decision. I'm not going to debate it here publicly, but I do think it was carefully researched, the letter that I wrote, and the decision that I made, and I will stand by it and defend it. And if it is determined, through a court otherwise, then that's Mr. Seymour's right to challenge it in that manner. But that is the format that these matters are to be determined by. It is not something that this board is consulted by, and that's just the process this board has set up itself. So I want to make that understood.
Yes, Mr. Maxson.
I don't want to be interpreted as speaking in defense of the Elections Commissioner's position regarding the law. Simply that an Elections Commissioner who has been sued for doing his job, a job which doesn't require interpreting the law, particularly election law, and has wide discretion regarding that. Whether or not I think he's wrong is immaterial. I think that we are doing the wrong thing, and I suppose we aren't doing a thing. I think that the county attorney is wrong, and I believe that the county attorney is going to cost the taxpayers additional money in this.
Appreciate your opinion. Yes, Mr. Gerald.
Okay, I just have a question about it. What exactly is Mr. Seymour being sued for? What exactly is the language of that?
He's being sued in his capacity as election commissioner, as is Ms. Hall, for having failed to take the action of certifying the ballot for the general election. No, the primary election took place. Yeah.
Okay, so Ms. Hall is as well then? Okay, so she didn't certify it as well? Doesn't it?
Neither of them have.
Okay.
Because nobody can appropriately define persons, nor is there any provision in there for tie. So, I mean, everybody can think what they want, what persons means, but there's no number in that law. So.
I understand the problem with the lacking language in the law. I understand that. I was just trying to clarify exactly why they were being sued. Who is suing them?
Citizen.
At this point, it is Mr. Thomas, I think his first name, Mr. Thomas, is a citizen, and also Ms. Crosman.
Basically residents of the city.
One resident of the city, the other is a candidate for the mayoral post.
Thank you.
Mr. Parrish? Okay.
What's happening with Ms. Hall? Is she being sued, but she's going through our attorney?
Yes.
Yes, I'm representing Ms. Hall at this point and the Board of Elections corporately. To the extent they're involved, of course, the Board of Elections is made up of Mr. Seymour and Ms. Hall. They have to act in unison in order to carry out any activity or decision of the Board of Elections, and of course, they haven't been able to do so in this particular matter, so hence the stalemate that has arisen.
So Jude decided to get his own attorney, or is Jude being sued typically?
No, they're being sued together in the same action.
Mr. Gerald?
Okay, so the next logical question, I guess, is what's the difference between, why one and not the other? I don't understand why one and not the other.
Because one wants to advocate for a certain result, and the other one wants to advocate for a different result, but they won't agree on the same result. Ms. Hall is satisfied to advocate for the result of the court resolving the issue. Mr. Seymour was insistent on advocating for a result of no more than 2 candidates being certified in the general election.
So, Ms. Hall is waiting for it to go to court before she certifies. Is that my understanding?
She's waiting for judicial guidance.
Okay.
Which is exactly the intent of us going in there, was looking for a declaratory judgment. Here's law, tell us how to execute it. Here's our situation, tell us how to... There's only one opinion that counts right now, and that's a Supreme Court judge that sits up there and tell us how to execute this law.
Okay, so at the moment then, Mr. Seymour is advocating for a certain resolution, but we don't, from the judge, but after the judge has, made an opinion, we don't know if he will certify after that or not, correct?
Probably I don't know how.
Well, presumably he'd be under an order from the court too, but the question was, he was not satisfied with not advocating to the court. And I explained to him I could not advocate two different positions on behalf of two different clients. That was the conflict of interest.
Are there two different lawsuits, one
No.
against each of us?
No,
Just the one?
it's one lawsuit, and that's why
Two people being part of it on the other side, two people on our side.
no. Two defendants, two respondents, both election commissioners, but each of them wanting different results or willing to accept different results. One of them in particular wanting to advocate for a certain position, which I could not, as one attorney, advocate for both of them. That's the conflict of interest.
Thank you. So just for clarifying, and I'm sorry to drag this out, but, but they're not necessarily being sued. They're being sued because they haven't certified, correct? So, I mean, the reason why or what they're advocating for doesn't seem to be, to me, I mean, I don't see why that is a part of defending them. I mean, how they're advocating, so Ms. Hall is basically looking for guidance from the judge, and Mr. Seymour is advocating for a certain result from the judge, but they're being sued because they won't certify. And we don't know if Mr. Seymour won't certify it after the judge has...
He's going to be under a court order.
Right, so I don't see why we're separating the two defendants from the lawsuit and not defending them both still. I mean, even because they have they're two different people, they have two different opinions on this, but that doesn't mean that they can't both be...
Okay, they can advocate for any position they want, but it's not their responsibility to execute that. Okay, so it requires a judicial intervention. Okay, so, and we were going in there representing an impasse and saying, okay, we have two commissioners at an impasse and asking for judicial intervention to decide how to interpret the law. And keep in mind, when somebody says, about Mr. Advocating for two people, there's no path to get there that we have. That's not going to cost more money, the county more money. So, aside from that, all we're saying is that judicial intervention, we want a qualified opinion. Skip all the other noise out there. We want a qualified opinion. Give us that qualified opinion. And if it's not three and it's something else, how do we get there? Because the law also doesn't tell us how to get there. So it's up to a judge, not up to us.
Mr. Jarrell, I'm not sure if you're asking why I can't represent them both, or are you asking why the county can't pay for both?
Well, both, actually, just because I guess I don't fully understand the nature of the suit against them. If they're being sued jointly because they won't certify, that's my understanding. I haven't read it, but I guess I don't see why it matters why they won't certify it. I would think they could be defended together, but
in their role in election commissioners, their role in certifying the election results and ultimately certifying the ballot for the general election, i.e. who won, is what we call a ministerial role, meaning they decide who has the higher vote count. They don't have discretion beyond that. They're not lawyers. They're not judicial officers. They don't get to make those decisions that we're discussing here. That's what a judge gets to do, and that's why we need to be in front of a judge to make these decisions. So by saying that now that we're in court, I need to advocate for a particular position, they, or at least one of them, is advocating for something they don't have a right to do in their role as election commissioner. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Basically acting outside the responsibility of their office by advocating for a certain position, correct? And they have no judicial authority to interpret what's in the law. Their job is to execute it.
I understand that point. This is the first time I'm thinking about this. I would like to know more about it, and if I could get some background information from the chair and the attorney, I would really appreciate it.
What would you like?
Huh?
What would you like?
Well, the opinion, I guess, Mr. Paulson's opinion on, in the actual lawsuit, I guess, and see exactly the background on it, and just so I can digest it later on without trying to remember the whole conversation from tonight.
We can extract the parts of it. Okay, so there's a response out there that we will send out the information supporting his decision and explaining explaining what's within the purview of the office of the commissioners versus what they're attempting to do. Okay? So, other than that, you're welcome to join me at 1 o'clock tomorrow in the Supreme Court with our county attorney.
No, thank you.
Okay. Then I'll let you know more of what we hear tomorrow. I don't expect it will be resolved tomorrow. So, yep. Yes, Mr. Peck?
Is the city going to modify their charter then? Has there been any discussions at City Hall about fixing their own situation that they have here? Or is that just not even on the radar yet?
That's, we're trying not to muddy the waters here, so to speak. So that will be a discussion for another day with the city, along with probably the next question you're going to have to ask. Okay?
Well,
we're trying not to conflate issues here. We're just
want
trying
to
to
pay their
stay
bill, they
focused
can
on
conduct their own elections then.
What's that?
If they don't want to pay their bill, they can conduct their own elections then.
Don't want to get me started on that one right now. We'll leave that one alone right now because we'll just leave that for another day. How's that sound? Yes.
As a member of the charter committee, no, that will not be in there. The charter is done. We just did a review on it, and this came up too late in the ball game, so that decision will have to be made by the policymakers down the road for changing that.
Plus, this is legislation that has to be passed at the state level, has to be amended, which constantly gets thrown in my face. It was passed by whomever was the Republican at the time, and I could tell them exactly what I think. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care who passed it. I don't care who wrote it. And I don't care what. There's two things I only care about. Person is not defined, and tie is not a provision in there. That's the only two things I worry about right now. That's the only two facts that we know here, other than the fact that we have two people that are tied.
And some of the problem too with that down the road is with the November election, if the same thing happens there is no provision for that either.
That's
So
right.
there could be another problem. So it does have to be corrected, but I understand why David's not defending them. He's just looking for an opinion to define persons and some of the other stuff in there, and Jude wants just 2 people on the ballot. And that's where the difference of opinion is. So if we can get the judge to make the opinion of defining persons on there, then the other 2 can proceed and do what they need to do there. But we need to get through that step first in the city so that we can move on. So I think Jude should have went along with it to get an opinion from the judge, and then the 2 of them can make a decision afterwards, but that's my opinion.
Challenge all the ballots they want after we're out of the picture. They can go to court, hang all the hanging chads they want to, hanging jacks or whatever we want to call them. So, Mr. McBride.
So based on what Mr. Daldo said, if this happens in November, on the taxpayers, we could be doing this all over.
We should have precedent by then. We don't know what we don't know what the circumstances will be. Let me back up. So, that's yet to be seen. So, any further thing to come before the body? Jack, what do you think? What do you think, buddy? You want to make a motion to adjourn? Is that a motion to adjourn, Jack? What do you think? Okay, second. Motion by Maxon, one of them. Second by Mr. Ferris. All in favor? Adjourned. Didn't think Jude be here. Somebody's going to whip it up for him. Whoops.